Hello, innovators. I'm Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with Flobo Boyce. He is basically an urban polymath, a professional comedian, esports caster, master of ceremonies, writer, video editor, marathon runner, pro wrestling ring announcer, and mobile DJ. So thank you for joining me on the Polymath podcast.
It's, surreal is a word we use a lot, but it is kind of weird to hear someone else say all the things you do. But yeah. Those are all true.
Well, and like I always say, if I run out of air when I'm saying all the titles, that makes me really happy on the show.
Awesome.
Hello and welcome to the Polymath Polycast. So, this is a show by PolyInnovator, so please say hello to the innovators and the audience.
Hey, innovators, what's going on of all different sizes, shapes, ages, genders, and gender expressions? Welcome.
Well, and so the way I like to break the ice is to have you share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
That no one knows? It sucks when you do so much content. Like, I think a lot of your stuff comes out. I can tell you, I went to my same high school. I had a lot of famous alums, so like Bernie Sanders, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Andrew Dice Clay, Martin Landau, Frank Torrey. I went to my high school.
That's cool. A neat little fact there. Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things too where you were born in New York?
Brooklyn,
there we go. Yeah. So I figured that like there's probably a lot of people around there that are super interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think so. It's weird because like Brooklyn is so large, and it's funny that people from Brooklyn say Brooklyn, not New York. But at the same time, but for me, it was like the farm, right? Because it's so many neighborhoods or whatever. Like it feels like a small town, even though it isn't. So a lot of times people say, "Hey, man, you live in a big city like New York City," but to me, it might as well just be a backyard, and also just be like the size of a shoebox. In a weird way.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that each district, too, just seems like its own essence, its own city, and its own, like, a city within a city.
Oh, yeah, the 5 boroughs are a city each. Like, when I was growing up in Brooklyn, if someone was going to the Bronx, we would ask them why. Why would you go across town? You know, it was just, that's how expansive it was.
Yeah. I played Spider-Man, the PS4 game, and just going through the entire city, which it's only like 2/3 of the scale, but it was still super huge. And you just passed each district, and it was so interesting to see how each of them were.
Yeah, Spider-Man was from Queens, which as a kid, you're like, wow, like, people from Queens. You know, it totally blew your mind back then.
Well, and so the first question here is, what was your mindset 5 years ago, and how have you changed since then?
Wow, 5 years ago. That's math, right? 2021. It was interesting because like I had been resigned from being in corporate life. Like, you know, the idea was to get yourself a good job. You know, my parents are immigrants, so the idea is like you come to this country, you get a good job, have kids, have them have good jobs. And I would say I was on my way to do that. I was a branding professional. I was a marketing professional, content management. I learned all those CMSs and code all you could. And I was still in the thick of that yet. But in my opinion, that was what happiness was. I was doing comedy 5 years ago, but it was definitely resigned to do like the Batman thing. You know, work during the day, then do comedy at night and weekends. That was pretty much it. But jumping off into entrepreneurship, that happened in 2017. That was like 4 years. So you're right at the end of that era.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And I mean, when it goes to all those different companies you work for, I saw your LinkedIn. It's like there's a lot of experiences there, and you got to have that jack of all trades approach where you got to try so many different things and learn so many different things.
Oh, absolutely. It's jack of all trades is a nice way of putting it, but it's not completely accurate. Only because there's some of us, I'm not trying to say those who are and are not, that are resigned of going full bore into things. So all the jobs I've had, professional jobs I've had, luckily enough, I've been able to go 100% in. I'm not saying you can or can't, I don't judge if you are, but it's some things I try and I dabble, I'm not good at. Like archery, I dabble. That does not count when I put my slashes at a party. But like marketing, because I came from visual arts, I have a film degree, so like everything, even though they kind of went in different directions, I think all of those are related as far as like the branding, the writing, the copywriting, the video optimization, the clipping, the YouTube stuff, all that stuff is kind of connected. So that's why I feel like, yeah, jack of all trades in that sense.
Yeah, well, and that's a good distinction to make there, too. I think the proper word I should have used is probably holistic, because you had, like, a very overarching view, and that's kind of what I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, awesome, man. I'll take that, sure.
Yeah. And so you just released your new musical comedy single. How was that to make, and how do you feel now?
Well, you know what? The single "Alone in the Club" came out in the throes of the pandemic this time last year. So it was I was a stand-up comedian, and I couldn't do shows. I couldn't do rooms. There were no rooms, and it's kind of odd to say, but But a year ago now, it was kind of like the scary time. It was like camp. We all just stayed in. We didn't go outside. I decided to say I'm gonna go out twice a week on these days, But I wouldn't want to get a comedy thing out, so I wanted to do a pandemic song, but I didn't want to mention the pandemic itself because I felt accurately that we'd been done with pandemic humor and we thought we'd be kind of done by now. So the premise is called Alone in the Club because the idea was like while we were all rushing out to get toilet paper and chocolate, my apartment was stocked with food. But the problem was I didn't have a lot of money, so the food I had was food I didn't even eat. It was like cheap food, and I bought all the booze I could. And so I felt like a king, but I had no release because I couldn't invite anybody over to eat this food or to party or anything like that. And so that was a kind of departure for me. It came out last June, but I just released a lyric video on April Fool's Day, which is pretty fun, because I thought it'd be kind of cool to really bring home like the visual aspect of it, of the neon lights and being like the awesome person you think you are watching Tiger King at home.
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting adapting too, and just like as a more social person too, like trying to figure out what to do and what to do as a content creator, because that's how a lot of times you get that social interactions through online mediums, and so it's interesting how the mentality behind it changes.
Well, it's funny, back to what I was saying about dabbling. I mean, I dabbled in content creation pre-pandemic. Like I had a vlog series. It was called What's Up Flobo. I was not call it What's Up Flobo Classic. And that was just me opening my laptop and talking. But when the pandemic hit and I was at home and I wasn't getting booked anywhere, that's when that hobby transitioned into one of the pursuits. And then since that has grown into so many things, now there's actually a brand, an umbrella brand, we'll probably get into, of all the different shows I run, because having the extra time at home with no weddings to go to a DJ, it was like, okay, let me just go into the Filipito brand.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I think you said on a different episode you had like this kind of the old podcast that you were doing, and then when you had these live shows, they kind of just replaced it in a way because you're focusing your efforts on those.
Yeah, those are kind of like the main ones. Like New Amsterdam Radio, which is a podcast that, much like yours, we get to sit and talk to interesting people. The original podcast was pre-pandemic, but it was just me talking to my phone about news stories happening and then contextualizing it for creatives. And so if I read an article about the price of Bitcoin, I would say, well, what does Bitcoin mean for creative? Or if Elon Musk wants to drop the Cybertruck this week, was an old episode. And I said, well, going outside the box is important as a creative. This is me really talking to my phone, but having nowhere to go, having to sit down. And if it wasn't, again, I had to give a shout out to my friend from high school. She didn't call me up and go, hey, you're famous, right? I go, no. She goes, I'm a guest on your show next week. And I go, okay. I wouldn't have allowed a guest on my shows. And that changed New Amsterdam Radio. But then that kind of shifted everything I've done between live entertainment, recorded entertainment, getting guests, becoming a better host, writing a better structure and format, that kind of thing. So one thing led to another. But again, if we weren't all at home, this would probably wouldn't have ever happened.
Yeah, no, because I actually always wanted to do interviews, but I didn't really know how to do it. And we matched on Matchmaker.fm, and that was my host, this podcast.co, who made Matchmaker, and they told me about their Matchmaker. I was like, okay, cool, let's try it out. And like I just realized I was doing solo episodes up until then, like about 42 or so, but a whole season's worth for me. And then I decided, okay, let's start doing interviews. And that's what happened because of the pandemic around May, is to start doing them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting how we kind of both just like around that same time, just like, okay, let's start doing interviews.
Well, no one's looking. Shoot all the shots, man.
Yeah. Well, and given the great ways you adapted to the online world, how do you go about making a change in your life during the quarantine? Like, how did you feel during that change?
So it was interesting for me because I'm kind of a hermit, and it's ironic that I'm feeling the pressure now, like April or May 2021. But during the time, I was like, great, because there was a bit of fear, I would say struggle, being self-employed, as a wedding DJ, as a content creator, because it had been famine leading into the pandemic. My 2019 fiscally wasn't good. It was kind of like, well, what am I going to do? I'm hitting that advanced age now. I can't be like, oh, don't worry, Mom, Dad, just help me out this month. Like, I had to come up with real solutions. And so rolling into 2020, I was going into it with a go for broke mentality. I was going to go out and do comedy shows in global locations. I was going to put all the money in DJ advertising. Like, this was like the last ditch effort. Had that failed, I would have just gone back and get a normal job, probably delivering groceries or something like that. Mm-hmm. And with the pandemic, there was a part of it being like, oh no. But for me, it was a bit of relief because now the whole world understood what an entrepreneur goes through. Being like, well, I have no idea how I'm going to pay the bills. No idea. And I like to use the analogy of like F1 or NASCAR. Basically, there was a wreck on the track and everyone had to slow down for a safety car. And so, thankfully, I've been gracious enough to gain a position or two as far as my brand and what I'm doing or whatever. But like what changed is that, okay, what the whole world knows is how it feels, how can I adapt now? If there's a little bit of a shred of compassion of saying, hey, look, there's something bigger than what we can control is hurting our market or whatever, not just me being lazy, not just me not getting the right clients or whatever, then how can I use that for good?
There was so much external accelerants happening and changing and just causing that, like the pandemic causing a lot of issues with people's financial struggles. And I empathize with you because too, I don't talk about this too much on the show, but I had a lot of financial troubles in 2019 too. I stopped working a job, I think at the end of 2018, early 2019. And so basically went down from 2 to 1 and just didn't have as much income. And then 2020 hits and again, lost my job just like everyone else did for a few months at least, and went back in a very short, small capacity. But it's like the income just hasn't come back yet.
Right,
so
right. Everyone's saying it's coming. You're like, great.
Yeah.
But let me know what.
Yeah. Well, from wrestling announcer to mobile DJ, there's a lot in your job history. How has that evolved? Which we touched on a little bit, but
I think the first thing was wrestling announcing. I mean, I was a wrestling fan from day one. I've been wrestling fan for 30 years. In fact, yesterday I just did a recap show for WrestleMania, which was the 37th edition of that. And that was about 2010, 2011. I went to a wrestling event at the Staples Center. That's where the Lakers play in here in Los Angeles. And I saw a guy giving out flyers. I said, hey, it's my dream to be a ring announcer. The guy rolled his eyes. John Ian, rest in peace, said, come on down to one of my shows and we could talk. And I went down to a show every week for 3 months. And I said, look, man, I if this is part of paying my dues, I'll pay it. But if there's no chance of me becoming a ring announcer, let me know now. Don't waste my time. And he goes, oh, we'll give you a chance. We have a ring announcer, but you could be an interviewer. So I was a backstage interviewer. I was the usher in there. Finally got into ring announcing and stuff like that, and it was amazing. And that gave me the confidence, combined with a lucky Groupon in 2014 to try stand-up comedy. And so comedy has become the big pillar, but like wrestling was always the first step on that journey. So from 11 to 14, it was ring announcing and all that. 14 was comedy, and that allowed me to try other things. Hosting shows and controlling a format, being comfortable with no crowd reaction. If you bombed before on stage, it's actually easier than you think. And interacting with chat and making the chat feel they're engaged. I mean, those are things you get from comedy, from performances, even without a physical location. So yeah, all things go back to pro wrestling. A lot of things in my life go back to pro wrestling. You'll see it today in this interview. It's going to ask me a lot of questions. I'm like, well, wrestling happened, and then...
No, I feel you. I was a lifeguard for my first job, and so like a lot of things I do now went back
to
Baywatch,
yeah.
And it's funny too because most people actually recognize me with a swimsuit on, but not clothes. So people are like, "Oh, I didn't recognize you with clothes on." That's a funny, dirty joke, but it's still. Yeah. And it's interesting though because if you don't take the shot, you often miss it. And so you took the shot there and you stayed the course. It took you longer to do it because they were being hard on you about it, but it seemed like it was worthwhile. And I did stand-up comedy a few times too, and it's hard. Like I bombed 2 out of 3 of them.
Oh no!
Yeah. But it's like it was worth the shot, and I could always go back too.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Now more than ever, man. Like when things open up, they'll take anything. Like, oh, we just want to laugh. We just want to laugh. Dustin Miller live on the marquee, face level, smiling, with or without clothes, whatever you want, man. We'll totally make it happen.
Well, and you said to the very astute there too. Like I was literally watching an interview of you with someone else's live show, and you were talking to the chat. Like it wasn't even your show, and yet you interacted with the chat.
Yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun because I'm sure like you create this. I'm working class, right? So I won't say we're poor because I think poor is all the rage now. I grew up poor because I think poor is like we don't have any food, but like I always said in my stand-up comedy, working class is, oh, we're having the same food again, ma. Like that to me is a small like difference. I know how hard it is when someone pays a $15, $30, $100 ticket to see a comedy show. I'm thinking about math. That's 8 hours of work, 20 hours of work. So you got to give everyone the same show. So if someone's taking their time out, especially now where there's content from all over and original program all over, say what's up. Say, hey, thanks for coming through, all that thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like I teach water fitness classes, and so I'll be seeing a whole class, and it's working a crowd. Like I have to go on there and kind of flip a switch and be the performer. And so I get what you're kind of saying there. You have to like be able to interact with each person as much as you can, and try to make them feel welcome and feel acknowledged is the right word.
Well, who goes to your classes? Are retirees, young kids? Like what?
Middle age for the class that I'm thinking of, but there's morning classes that are more of the retiree crowd. But I teach evening, and I literally have from a 12-year-old kid to a 7-year-old woman. Like, it just depends on unisex class, so anybody can come in any age. It's kind of interesting because you get a
Dang.
wide variety.
Yeah, what don't you do, man?
Yeah, it's one of those things. And so you consider yourself to be an urban polymath, from comedy to music to DJing to hosting and even podcasting. So how do you live your interdisciplinary life?
Just ragged. Terrible. No, it's a funny thing. It's like spinning plates, you know. I mean, there's very few days I do everything every day, and that's okay. I'm a firm believer that you have to do something at least monthly for it to count. There's some things you dabble in. Like again, I ride motorcycles. I do that 3 times a year. I don't say I'm a writer, right? It's not fair because then you'd be collecting slashes for everything, you know. I'm a baker too. When'd you bake? Yeah. Thanksgiving, you know, just weird. But for me, yeah, I try to juggle it as far as the best I can. I try to be as organized with my time as I can, using calendar apps, using Microsoft To Do to make sure what's on my to-do list and understand what's important, what to work on. So like right now, and there's some things that are rising and falling. So right now, my comedy input isn't as much. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'll probably write a joke a week because for 2 reasons. I do most of my jokes live now on the shows, and also as a esports caster, I think it's right now more important for me to get better at the game that I am casting at because people do judge you on that, for example, so I spend more time doing that currently. But it's really reevaluating. Like if you had a store and all your different disciplines were on the shelf, every month you got to see what's selling, what's not selling, what needs to be rearranged, what needs to be discontinued, that sort of thing.
Oh, and that's an interesting point. Like this question in particular really piques my interest because time management for someone who's polymathic is very important. Mm-hmm. That's why they always people look down on jack of all trades because it looks like a lack of focus or lack of interest and deep interest and that kind of thing. But it could be better than having just one specialty. You could be better than that because you can have that cross-disciplinary training. But you have to be able to put enough time into each category to get something out of it. True. And you were it was interesting how you're talking about how you were able to kind of cross-section your comedy now in your live shows. So you can actually kind of practice that way. But then there's other focuses. Like you have to do your gaming. I take it Rocket League is what you're practicing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I saw those videos, man. I saw those flips.
Also because of wrestling, by the way. If it wasn't for wrestling, I would have been in Rocket League.
Really? Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, I told you, man. There's so many wrestling references. So I don't think because I'm an older player. I mean, I literally play with people half my age. I don't consider myself a gamer. But back in 2018, Psyonix, which makes Rocket League, they're based in San Diego. They had Comic-Con in San Diego for San Diego Comic-Con in July. For the 3rd birthday celebration, they played Rocket League on the giant Petco Park baseball screen. And my friend Mike, who was there, hit me up and he goes, hey, look, they have a deal with WWE. They're going to be wrestlers, Xavier Woods and a pre-man Becky Lynch there for autograph signings. You want to go? And I go, as a bigger wrestling fan than I am, I don't do wrestling signings, but I went this time to show some support. And I saw this giant game on the giant screen. They gave us some WWE exclusive promo codes for items in the game. And I've been playing since 2018. And over the pandemic, I called up one of my Facebook groups I play with. And I go, hey, if you guys are doing a tournament, if you need someone to say some jokes over what's happening, give me a call. They did. I did my jokes. Thought it was nothing. Someone hit me up and go, you're a fantastic caster. I'm like, what the hell is casting? And I had to go look that up. And so I would say since April 2020, I've been doing these tournaments from top flight RLCS to regional things to independent things. It's been a crazy trip. And that's the thing I picked up within the year, within the pandemic.
Well, that's really cool.
Thanks for wrestling.
Yeah, it's because of wrestling too. Like it comes back to that, and it's good to have that pillar though, like the kind of center balance where like you have that wrestling background to help you adapt or translate your knowledge of wrestling or translate what you're doing there or just be the spark to new things like this. Yeah. And it's interesting too, like I would consider you a gamer. If you're sitting there playing, you're casting, that gives you gamer cred.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me, man. You warm my heart. Good night, everybody. It's great. And a high note.
Well, and it's interesting too because Rocket League's one of the few cross-platform games too, especially when it comes to like PS4. And so my friends only had PS4 and I have a PC, and so it was one of the few games we could actually play together and whatnot. And so I definitely played a bit.
Sweet. What's your rank, bro?
It's not very high. I haven't played in a bit.
Aw.
I played it a bit back then, but I think my brain
Neither
is
am
not
I.
too
It's
good.
cool. It's totally cool.
I have been playing Apex Legends, so actually you'd be an interesting caster for that, probably.
Oh, that's the next step, man. Because like, sidebar. One of my childhood crushes is actually the voice of that. So I gotta, which is so
Wait.
weird.
Which one?
I'm trying to figure out what her in-game name is.
Grace?
I'm not sure. Erica Luttrell. She plays
recognize it.
one of the characters there on Apex Legends. But as a kid, she was in this show called the New Ghost Rider Mysteries, and I was always like, yeah.
But no, I thought that was kind of cool because Apex Legends is one of those esports games that could really be building out, since that might be another casting opportunity.
Absolutely. Apex, Valorant, like COD. I mean, those are the next sport is what's going to define the kind of caster I am. Because again, what I'm cracking up because you'll love this. There are more analytical casters than I am. There are more people who are mechanically sound at the game. Like in Rocket League, I'm a Plat 1, a Plat 2, which is literally average. I'm literally an average player in that game. But the reason why I get booked for esports casting is I talk about the psychology, the feeling of being tilted. And I got that from professional wrestling announcing. Because we've all seen a headlock a billion times. But a difference between a headlock and look at that headlock grinding on the neck, with just taking out every ounce of will out of his competitor is a whole different thing because you now put in the psychology of the move into the match. So I get booked because I gave our wrestling flair to video games and esports.
No, I love that, and it reminds me of me teaching swimming, because I teach swimming as well, and I have the physics, the psychology, and the philosophy of swimming, and I take those same 3 Ps and apply it to other areas, and that was because it's my pillar. For you, wrestling's your pillar, and you're taking the things you've learned in that and applied it to other areas.
Well, damn, 3 Ps of swimming in the pool.
Yeah. Well, and I just thought that was kind of cool there because that trans-contextual knowledge is what I'm trying to exemplify here, and I think that your wrestling is the key for that, which I think is cool.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of polymathy and all this stuff, something I ask all my guests is, what is a polymath to you?
Ooh. Well, I believe a polymath is someone that is able to take different things that may seem disparate and find a way to have a through line that works for them. It doesn't have to be apparent to anything, but as long as it makes sense to them to have a through line, and they have equal passion or at least a greater passion for all of them. So where I can do, like I said before, I could do many things, and things I can't do. I can't cut a bagel in half for one, or fold laundry. I'm the worst at that.
Dude, me too.
Yeah, it's so rough, dude. But the things I do work, as different as they are, do have a through line. It may not be apparent, it may not be the brand, it may be to me, but as long as I can feel myself in what I work, then that qualifies.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too because you mentioned brand, and I think that branding is a very important aspect to people in general. Like now we're approaching this ever online world, and people who have brands are often getting a head start on a lot of people who don't. But then there's this idea of branding someone who's polymathic, and all these content creators are saying you need to niche down, have one topic, one niche. But as someone who's polymathic like us, we have multiple niches. You have multiple shows. You were mentioning how your old podcast was just you doing these like kind of ideas and rants and just sharing your knowledge, so to speak. And that's what my micro polycast is like. It's just little short idea bursts kind of thing. And so I get that. And so it's interesting how, like, do we make more series? Do we have multiple shows? I interviewed one guy who had 4 podcasts, like separate hosts and everything, like separate shows and everything for them. But it was like, could he combine them? Well, not so much. But maybe for you can't. I don't know. It's just, that's the kind of curious question I wanted to ask.
Oh, well, if I can just totally answer your total question there.
You totally didn't question.
Totally didn't ask that. I really feel like branding is something that's important, but it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it as a product, then you're going to put yourself in a position to not grow. And so there's some people who are like that. This is my brand. Can this picture of me holding up this Batman shirt appeal to my brand? If you're asking questions like that, then you put yourself too narrow of a niche for your brand. For me, it's a philosophy. It kind of is the personality of what you are. Much like how we buy Ben & Jerry's ice cream, you look at the back of the label or the About Me on the page, you know what they're about, and then you're willing to accept Chunky Monkey or Fish Food or Cherry Garcia or whatever. So I don't say my brand is I'm from the streets and I'm from Brooklyn. I learned that from comedy, actually. Because when I first started doing comedy, I had this thing called the modern throwback. And that was because I think I started comedy when I was like my late 20s. I had these ideas of being an older person. I thought it was cool until I hit a wall and I go, well, there's going to be a time where I'm not going to be the young kid being the older person. I'm just going to be the older person. I was 29 when I started. And so I decided to bring myself. So what my brand is what the public has let me know. Hey, a Flobo show has positivity in it. It has a certain kind of energy level. I can't stop or temper this. It's what I am. So New Amsterdam Radio is me being more inquisitive of my thing. What's Up Flobo After Hours, my second podcast, is me being more jovial, like a comedy show, late night talk. Flobo Saw on Netflix. It's using my film degree. It's all me. There's nothing different. I'm not wearing a top hat. I'm not wearing a monocle. But you know when I'm being pensive as opposed to being jovial, as opposed to being inquisitive. That's the person. That's the distinction of each show. But there is one philosophy. There is one look, and that is a brand that allows me to grow or change or swap things out if they don't work for me.
Oh, I love it. And I love how you reacted to my not question, because I wanted it to be a question, but I didn't formulate it well, and you answered it perfectly, so thank you.
No problem.
And it's interesting, too, because you're kind of alluding to this umbrella of sorts, because that umbrella is the philosophy, it's your ethos, it's you, your essence, if you will, because you have that high energy, you're funny, you're like charismatic guy, and yeah, but it's true, though, like you are, and you can sense that in each of the shows, and then you have the different layers, like the inquisitive, like you said, or the more just analytical in that particular episode or something like that. And it is interesting too, because like, how do you show that? And you just have to discover it. Then you have to let people find it out for you too.
Mm-hmm. Let the audience figure out what the brand is. You know?
Mm-hmm. I like that. And feel free to get, I know we kind of have a short time today, but feel free to get meta if you feel like it. I can always have you back up.
I will, man. Once you ask me more wrestling questions, I'm like,
I think I got another one here.
Okay.
What do you think it takes to be an urban or modern polymath?
Oh, wow. A lot of patience with yourself, and that's something I've told myself too. You know, when you start acquiring accolades or aptitudes, there's a lot of pressure to be good off the break. You're not going to be good, and it's okay to put it in a holding position. If you try something, you think it's cool, you want to research it, you want to be a hobbyist, you want to give yourself no pressure to things, then that's okay too. Go back to Esports Casting. So as far as I'm concerned, my name is Flobo. My friends call me either Flobo or Flobito, right? Keep that in mind. Flobito.com is one of my websites. When I started doing Esports Casting, I had to pick a name because my gamer tag was like Formula 625, and no one's going to say that on stream. But I went with Novanta, which is the Italian word for 90, and then I can get to the reason why I picked that there. And my friends who knew me were like, "Dude, you're Flobo everywhere else. You're Flobito here, you're Flobo there. We even call you Flo sometimes. Why are you going with Novanta?" And I said, well, if I came to esports, this brand new world where I literally just said people half my age are making crazy bunches of money as Flobo, I would put too much pressure on myself to be good out the gate. I don't want to be the comedian who's like trying to be yucking it up. Well, these things are very serious to these athletes. Give myself a chance to learn from scratch. And so what was funny is that once Novanta started doing well, all it takes is one Google search. You can link them together anyway. You know what I mean? But that gave me the 2 or 3 months to really try it from being, that's what true intellectualism is. It isn't being smarter than anybody else. It's you being like, I have acquired this knowledge. I'm open to more knowledge. Allow me to make mistakes either by myself or with a small group or with different people so I can come back and learn something else. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was learning something new at work this past week or so, I was like, I was kind of being assessed in a way because I did my work, they had to assess it, and it was interesting. I was like, did I mess up? And I literally handed off. I was like, hey, if I messed up, let me know because I want to get better. You know what I mean? I want to get this stronger and stronger so I make less and less mistakes.
Yeah,
and
that's how it is.
Same idea. And with esports too, it is competitive. And I mean, you don't have to be the best of the best, but being a good player, even Plat, I think Plat is still pretty good. Because like,
you're totally buttering me up, Justin. You're totally just making me feel good with myself.
I mean, hey, I'm feeling the energy, and that's like positivity. So, what have you learned as an esports caster?
It is one, I had to learn a lot. Again, I am an older player. I'm north of 30. And so a lot of things I didn't learn about the terminology of things, even the slang. Like I don't ever say POG or FTW. Like to me, I'm from the era where FTW means something completely different. You know what I'm saying? So I had to learn a lot of stuff. Discord, I had to learn from scratch. Didn't know how Discord worked. Hey, most of my jobs and gigs and bookings come from the Discord app or the desktop application. I had no idea what that was. And so that was something, it was a learning curve for me. But it was an experience of like the game itself was something I was so passionate about. I was okay of looking like a loser. But when you look like a loser and you're trying, doesn't matter if it's learning a video game or being in Japan and having terrible Japanese skills, people respond to momentum. And I always go to my analogy of, if my car blew a tire out, I don't pull over and go, welp, right? If I even hop out and I look lost with my tire iron, someone will eventually pull over. Hey, are you trying to hand tire? Let me help you out. And I think that's been the most valuable thing, is that if you put yourself 100% into a subculture, a lot of times there'll be some kickback or blowback. But more than not, people will try to say, great, you're coming into this. It'd be great. There's not many esports casters at my age. There's not many esports casters of color, even players of color. So I was kind of welcomed with open arms, just because I just approached it as if I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
The beginner's mind, as I say in yoga.
Yeah, I'm talking about yoga. I did DDP's yoga. Another wrestling reference. I did DDP's yoga, and he's like, "Let's do it, bang!" But he was never like, "This is the ancient art of yoga." Yeah,
yeah, that's funny. When I played a new game like Team Fortress 2 or Apex Legends, there's just a lot of players who'll be like, "Hey, this is how you do this." Like, they'll show you the way if you're new. And I try to pay that forward, too. If I see a green player, I'll show them, like, hey, you should do this, or activate your power now, so that way you can actually help us in this team. At one point, there's a subculture on Team Fortress 2 where you have to have a hat. If you don't have a hat on your character, it's really bad. You just look like a noob at this point.
Yeah, it's the opposite of Rocket League.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, because, like, this guy gave me a decently nice hat at one point, because he's like, you have to have a hat. Here, take this. And I was like, just some nice player who had a ton of them. He was like, gave them to me. I was like, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like, you pay it forward like that.
Oh, sorry. I looked it up. I found it was bothering me. Erica Luttrell voices Bangalore on Apex Legends.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Dude, she's dope. Like, Bangalore is also really cool, too. You can just do some mad skills with that. I have some clutch plays with that. And it's funny, too, you mentioned how, like, FTW means something different for you back in the day. I still do that. I don't say Pogs. I don't say too much of the Gen Z stuff, but I do kind of have that, like, middle ground in a way.
Right. Lucky you, man.
LOL meant, like, lots of love when I was a kid.
Yeah, lots of love. What does Sag mean? Oh, okay. You know.
Well, and so given the rise of the esports space too, and let alone the past few years or even in the last year, what do you think are the trends that you've seen?
Well, it's hard to not talk about the growth of esports without the pandemic, because there was LANs. For those, I'd learned that too. That's when you actually have physical people in a room and you play the game. But it changed with the pandemic, because so many traditional sports were locked out or shut down. We saw Fox Sports, NBC Sports, rest in peace, and ESPN put esports tournaments on TV. And now there was kind of like that, almost like NFTs are now, like the, what's this about? How do I get in? That kind of thing. We're seeing bigger orgs do it. So now when I say esports, it isn't quite the same reaction as when I first started. When I first did things in April, it was like, you're playing video games? And now I'm like, I'm in esports. I go, well, how'd you get in? And I think that's the growth of what the normalization of that is. I mean, our players are getting younger and younger. You're seeing a lot more colleges get esports programs, and that being in the athletics like folder, like that to me blows my mind, because for a long time, video games were the antithesis of physical play. Like video games were, I played the classic Nintendo when I was a kid. My brother had it. He was older than me, but I played it. It was, you did video games for an hour if your homework was done. And now kids who are 15 are making hand over fist money doing it. And as a nerd in a time where being a nerd was like not cool, like the kids nowadays don't understand. But back then it wasn't cool to be a nerd. It warms my heart that it's changed and grown so much. Where I see the moms of esports players getting burner Twitter accounts going, my baby boy just won this LAN. It is absolutely surreal. And to be a part of that, wherever how slight, whether I do get a second game, or if I stick with Rocket League, it's been a lot. Because Rocket League saved my life as a game, and to be able to pay that forward to other people, it's a great thing. And video games bring people together, so why not?
I love that. And video games are really just a great way to bring people together. It's good for the mind, good eye for the hand-eye coordination too. And I mean, your physical body actually is very important. I know a lot of esports players who do a lot of exercise to make sure that their body is efficient, so that way they can actually play the game more efficiently too.
Yeah, it's one of the untold secrets. I mean, a lot of times you'll think of the quote-unquote overweight in the basement, but like the fast twitch muscles, especially in your pectorals and your forearms and your wrist action, I mean, we'll see players like take time with little the weighted balls, or they'll try to do like their hand grip to make sure they have the best controller grip. It's really is a game of nuance, a sport of nuance.
And so kind of a little rapid fire with these next few questions here. You've mainly mentioned that your profile, the only game you're interested right now is Rocket League, but what games would you might take in the future, play in the future?
Yeah, FIFA is great. I mean, FIFA is like the game I studied when someone said you're going to be a caster, because like the in-game commentary is like very generic. So you have to bring your own flavor to the in-game to make it different. Again, WWE, 2K, I'll love to do that. Not quite shoutcasting fighting games, but Smash is always a good time. Why not, right? Whenever the opportunity arises. I think I'm in a position now with my background. If someone says, here's a game, you're on in 3 weeks, I'll give it the old college try.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too because like there was a game that came out recently called Hyperscape that was really blowing up, and it was like another PvP kind of shooter game, but it was unique, it was fast paced, and so I wondered if like you could find a trend hack, as they say. If you could trend hack a new game like that, that'd be kind of cool too.
Yeah, definitely get ahead of anything would be great for sure.
Well, and I noticed on your Twitch and YouTube, there's like your shows and then the few Rocket League videos. Where do you hope to take those channels?
It's funny because with Twitch, I didn't know what to do with it for the longest time. It was just a destination I would dump my, I won't say dump, but I had it as another location for my talk stuff. But what I've noticed, one of my shows I did, it ended. I did Commander's Log, which was the Star Trek Discovery after show, and when that ended for the season, I was below my hours, and so I decided, let me throw some couple of my Rocket League stuff in there. But as my profile has grown, and the casting space, it's almost like this point of discovery for people. They go, wait, Flobo is Novanta? Novanta is Flobo? This is crazy. This is nuts. So I try to dabble with games here and there, but truthfully, week to week, I don't think of a streaming schedule. Now, if that changes, if I do get like RLCS NA, and that's part of the thing, and there's actually a genuine interest to see my plat behind play, then by all means, because the game was fun. I played, I would say, 6 to 8 hours a week without any kind of like streaming anyway. It's just, I mean, it's a stage fright, because I know when I was a silver 2, when I was a gold 1, I was just so rife with fear of being like called out as trash. I've never streamed it, so if the people want it, they'll get it.
Yeah. Well, and I also made me think too, because some people would like make a separate channel for their gaming versus their like shows. But I feel I'm in the mindset of, like, the more content you can make, the better. And if it's on the same channel, that's more entry points on that one channel.
Oh yeah, if you have the affiliate unlocked or the partner unlocked, you're getting money hand over fist. You want to go do a spinoff, great. But I literally have like what 100 followers. Like I'm fine. I'll totally put it all over.
Just
there.
add it. Yeah. Good. I like that. And so, just a quick question here: what made you go with StreamYard?
That's a good question. So this time last year, okay, step back. A lot of my wrestling commentators were on AfterbuzzTV, which was a network ran by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. And they went on hiatus, which eventually it's still on hiatus indefinitely. And a lot of the hosts were kind of waiting to see if they'll come back. I trend hacked then, I guess. And I tried to find a solution that was affordable, that allowed me the perfect balance of some kind of creative option, like backgrounds and intros. That's why Zoom was not an option to me. And the ease of use to hit the button to record. Because once I hit record, I'm putting the chat quote in, I'm doing the graphics, I'm hitting play on things. Because I know like I can go to OBS or Streamlabs and custom build something or MTP, but like I didn't have the wherewithal to do that and be like, and now my thoughts about this week's wrestling match. It would be too much. So I thought StreamYard hit the common balance of that thing, and over time I became like an advocate in that way. People hit me up, like, oh, how does this work? How do you do it? I was invited to the StreamYard Spotlight a couple months ago to be able to chat with the Ben sisters, and so I love it. I think it's the perfect balance. Of course, again, when it comes to yourself and your skills and your tools, always reevaluate every 6 months, every 12. They call it an audit or content audit or a vendor audit. See if it works for you. But as of right now, I'm really happy with StreamYard.
Well, StreamYard's one of my top ones too. I've used it as a guest before, and it's really interesting too, the tool itself. And you mentioned something that made me think, I don't know if this was a previous guest or something like that who told it to me, or I watched it on the show, but you're talking about the wrestlers themselves. Like, I guess there's something in a contract where they can't be really doing their own personal streams per se. But they were saying, like, if WWE would let that happen, like maybe the funding, like, no, not the funding, maybe all the funds that they make as streamers would go to WWE, but at the very least they could build up their personal brands that would give up more traffic to WWE itself, and it felt like there was a disconnect between the old way and new way.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance there that I'm not sure I can get into personally, but it's kind of like, to what I understand it's like, imagine if Warner Brothers had a movie called The Flash, And then Ezra Miller was like, hey, welcome to the Flash streaming. Like, Warner Brothers owns that character. And so they really were trying to protect their character's interests because kids don't really know the difference, whether or not it's Sasha Banks or Mercedes KV on a stream. But as far as the money take and that sort of thing, way above my pay grade. No idea.
And so, too, have you thought about making short form content like Reels, TikTok, or YouTube Shorts? Because it seems like it would fit you.
Well, I'm a... yes and no. I'm a film editor by trade. My degree's in film editing, and it's one of the things I've learned I went to school for. The problem with that is it is the worst for a perfectionist. And so I dabble with short form content on my Patreon. The people who are on the Boisterous crew, which is the top level, they'll get one or two like curated pieces or the cut pieces a month or so. As far as like TikTok, I don't quite understand it. I still don't. I'm on it. I was on it for a while. I took the year off because of the security issues or proposed security issues or what they said it was. I came back on it. I'm still trying to figure out what that is because the amount of skill on that app makes me feel old. Like, I know I am old, but I feel old when someone's like talking to themselves. There's like people doing like jump cuts and like all these other things. And so my videos are very basic. It's like me offering street level wisdom. It's me offering a sight gag joke. And you can follow it at Flobo Boyce on TikTok. Say hello. I think I have like 200 followers. Whatever.
Well, what's interesting is that I think that you actually would be able to figure it out pretty quickly with your comedy background, maybe in the wrestling announcer too. That same energy you would apply to that. You just have to make it in a shorter aspect. Because I've seen a lot of people who share their wisdom, like whether it's exercise or quantum physics, even at some points, or science. Or Hank Green, who's a famous YouTuber, has like just short little videos of him sharing ideas. Like someone asks him a question, he'll make a video on it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of like that educational content on there too. But I also thought about cross-posting, because right now, all three of them are very similar, and there's not much penalty for cross-posting as long as you don't have like a watermark, like TikTok watermark on Instagram, for example.
Right.
Which was really funny. The first couple months of Reels that came out, people were doing that and going viral with watermarks from TikTok and everything.
Yeah.
But I had an idea of like if you could make a short form video, like you can design it yourself on your computer and then just do it maybe a few times a week. You can cross-post it to all three and kind of get like not a cheat, but an easy way of doing it.
Look at that free knowledge, though. He's not even charging y'all for that, yo. That's awesome. I mean, I'll definitely think about it for sure.
Yeah, and if you want any more advice about TikTok, you can hit me up. I've been on there since Musical.ly, so I like helping.
Damn, old school dude. Okay, respect.
So how have you built your network of programming the new Amsterdam entertainment?
Yeah, again, one after the other, thanks to the pandemic. And the Amsterdam radio was first. And What's Up Flobo, the original one was there before, but I don't really count that. It's kind of its own thing now. After Hours came in the summertime. I was talking to my brother, I was like, look, I need another show just to have something beyond the wrestling programming. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, eventually I'd like to have a variety show, late night variety show. He's like the Daily Show? I'm like, no, but kind of. He goes, yo, make your own thing, just call it a spin-off and go. So After Hours was his idea. And that show started off being just me talking about the news in a dark room. And that evolved into hiring guests and talking about the news and kind of this quasi-political show. Then you realize that no one really watches the news anymore, especially in 2020 where everyone was like so burnt out on the news. So then it became like a late night comedy show, which I come in, I do a little intro, a long-term guest, we talk, we laugh. I try to be as boisterous with my responses as I can, some chat questions and a game, and call it a nice little feel-good hour. Commander's Log is my Star Trek one. Flobo saw it on Netflix. That is strictly the Netflix original content reviews. Like, that's my film degree kind of thing, TV shows, movies. And Flobito's Book Club is my bi-monthly book club series that's available only on Patreon. So the reason why it's called New Amsterdam Entertainment, two reasons. One, the oldest tenured show, it's New Amsterdam Radio, which was the name of a stationery company that I started in 2017. And two, during the course of the pandemic, when I was going to, because I worked for myself as a wedding DJ, I had to essentially make a formal business to apply for loans. Like, I was just working as myself, paying my taxes, of course, but I was just an individual. But I actually did the formal DBA paperwork, and I gave it a name, and I said, well, if all my presence is this, and I'm doing this, I can say I own a hybrid live entertainment and digital entertainment network, and that's why it's called, I think as of July of last year, New Amsterdam Entertainment. And it's been a good ride.
Yeah, I love that. And I might need to pick your brain at some point about that because I need to get mine more official and start doing that more too.
Oh yeah, it's a growing piece for everybody.
What have you learned from all of your marathons that you've done? Because it seems like that's a lot.
Okay, so let's take a step back here. So a long, long time ago, I used to weigh 375 pounds, and I decided when I was 24 that I just had enough, and I started going to the gym. And when I was in grad school, I could tell you, gym memberships are a lot of money, and being able to keep fit when I didn't have money for gym membership has been one of the hardest things that anyone does, pandemic aside. And I got into running, and I could tell you my first run was 300 feet from my apartment to the end of the block by a Baskin Robbins, and I got ice cream and I came back home. But I really opened up the door to what I wanted to do to run, and so it became something I didn't necessarily love. And it's okay not to love exercise, but now I feel it's like a necessity in a good way. Like, I don't love brushing my teeth, but I know I have to. You know what I mean? And so being able to do that, and my first ever half marathon was my second ever race. I did a 5K before, and it was a race in Las Vegas, a rock and roll marathon, and it was for the Crohn's and Colitis Association, and I did a little half joke. I go, hey guys, if you guys donate to my cause, I will wear the shirt of the sponsor you like. And I was expecting like $20, but a friend I went to college with went to her boss and dropped $1,000 on me. And I was 285 pounds at the time. So I go, okay, someone's bought into me. Remember I said earlier about momentum? Someone has bought into me, what I'm doing. And even though this is my journey to get fit, I already lost 100 pounds or 90-something pounds. Now it's time that people are actually begging on me to finish. And you do one, and you go, I finished. And then it's almost like, I won't compare it, but I've heard it's like childbirth. It's the worst feeling in the world until you finish. You're like, well, I just can't do one, and I could do a better time. I get better equipment, better shoes, better gear, better joint medicine or whatever. And so for a long time, I would say for a good 3 or 4 years, I was all about that life. And so I have 5 half marathons to my name, about a dozen 10Ks, and about another 24 5Ks, And so after my 5th half marathon, I said, you know what, this is a good place to stop. If I get the bug again, sure. But this is a good place to stop to say that I did it. This is a guy that always came late in gym class, the guy that was made fun of because he was big. For those of you who don't know how big 375 pounds is, and I guess I know this in men's sizes, but my pants was a 56-inch waist. My shirt was 6 extra large. So to do that, to get down to a size that I can buy clothes off the rack. I remember going to Walmart at 3X and I almost cried. I was like, 3X, oh my goodness, I made it. Has been for a long time the crying achievement of my adult life. Because the world does treat you differently when you're heavy set. The world does treat you differently when you look a certain way. And to be able to do that on my terms, well, that was just icing on the cake.
The power of exercise is not to be trifled with, and it's as a personal trainer too. I can't really. I preach.
What don't you do, Dustin? You're a personal trainer also?
Yeah.
What?
And so it's interesting though, because that's the thing. I get it. I train people who are trying to lose weight. In my case, I was trying to gain weight because I was super scrawny growing up, but it was still it was hard because I was underweight for the most part, and people made fun of me too. It's no matter what end of the spectrum you're on, having to deal with that is always hard. And running is a great way of just getting going, and then the more you do it too, you start getting a little addicted to the runner's high. Did you ever get the euphoria from that?
I won't say towards the end. Towards the end, I'm like, I'm done. You know what I mean? But I would say there's a period in the second mile or third mile, you're like, you do it, you hear the trumpets, you're like, dun, 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 or whatever is going through your mind. But for me, it's kind of like a bell curve. I never finish it like, I'm invincible. It's more like, I need a nap.
Well, the I'm invincible thing is usually the endorphins, but the flow state I thought was actually kind of cool. I almost mentioned it earlier, but being in the flow state is a heightened state of focus. Is that your prefrontal cortex shuts down, you have no more ego, you're just kind of in your zone, like you're you. And so the sports people will say in your zone, or people who are marathoners will say runner's high, or the gamers will say flow, whatever you call it, it's just being in that state.
Yeah, in your bag feeling, it's great because you kind of feel like you're hitting superpowers. Songs slow down, you're kind of just in bullet time. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, and something you actually said that was really interesting, the bell curve. A lot of people don't realize there's a recovery phase, which might be why you were so tired at the end too. Because after you get that heightened state, all the neurochemicals are happening all at once. Then you have to replenish. You have to recover from that heightened state.
What's that? Milkshakes? Oh, I agree, dude. Oh, totally. That's like that for every race.
I mean, you earned it at that point. And given you practice so much, from what I saw in a video too. You had like 24 different medals too. Like you were saying, you had all these different wins. Can you tell me more about those medals?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if there's anyone that's stuck on your mind, but the
I
Vegas.
saw Darth Vader one.
Oh yeah, so that was the '80s run. They had the Darth Vader and a DeLorean one for that one. So yeah, there was a time where if it was happening in LA or in Southern California and it was themed, I got one for the Day of the Dead. You know, the Correo de los Muertos. It was kind of fun to do that. And there's virtual race companies that you can buy the medals and run to it. But again, it was kind of like the paying yourself back for the rewards of being last in gym and trying your hardest. So for my half marathons, I did Vegas twice. Downtown LA for Halloween. My favorite and fastest was Pasadena. That doesn't really happen anymore. And I did Surf City, which is in Huntington Beach, which is a flat track course at the beach. You get to run alongside the Pacific Ocean for about 10 of the 13 miles. It's SoCal, bro. And the medal is an actual surfboard. Like they give you a surfboard with a little piece in it. But I remember being all about the Rock and Roll Medal series because not only did each race give you a thick medal, which I thought was important, if you did like multiple races or like challenge races, they give you like bonus medals. It was like, did 2 in a year, bam, here's your encore medal. 3 in a year, triple crown. So I was like racking them up and I felt like, I know they say you don't feel like an athlete. You are an athlete because you're actually physically exerting yourself. But it felt great to train for something and then to go out there and do it. And for someone to say, we acknowledge you doing it, take this home.
Mm-hmm. Getting that like reward for it too, after all that hard work. Mm-hmm. And so how is it going from East Coast to West Coast?
Well, all my family's still out in New York. I haven't been back in about 2 years. My parents are older; they're in their 70s, and so for obvious reasons, I kind of stayed my social distance of 3,000 miles. But they're vaccinated now; that'll be changed. The answer I always give is the weather's better here. I lived most of my adult life here. I moved here when I was 21 years old, 22 years old. So a lot of my adult life was here. I like the weather. I like the fact that it's a creative city. You know, you can actually talk to people and say, look, my content isn't working. Do you have any tips? Someone goes, well, this is what I do. Da, da, da. New York is the opposite. I go back to New York to replenish the battery. Nobody cares that you're creative because New York is the best at fashion, law, sports, everything else. So you can say, oh, my content's not working. And your friends can be like, so? You know, sometimes you need that sometimes. And I've always had my way, I'll be bi-coastal. I would love to have 2 high-rise condos overlooking each coast and drive my pickup truck in Cali or my motorcycle in New York. But until that day, I think I'm in between two worlds there, yeah.
Yeah, but it definitely seems like that's 2 parts of your heart, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I'm a Brooklyn kid. It ain't gonna change.
Yeah.
I know, like I don't have the frame here, but I have a Mets poster on my wall. Like the Mets come here what 6 days a year, you know.
Right.
I'm all about it.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Well, and this is kind of a random question. And so, are you still into Pokemon?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. So everyone knows 5th year of Pokemon Go. I've been dabbling a little bit. I know Gen 1 by heart. Gen 2 is okay, but I think I'm more of a casual fan. Like I don't try to be embarrassed about it. I don't say I've outgrown it, but I'm not as into the new metas as the kids are because Pokemon's around long enough. Back in my day, there's only 12 types. You know what I mean? Like, but I respect it, man. Like I learned long enough, man. Pokemon as a show got me hyped for school. As a video game series, gave me so many hours of entertainment. As just the animals or the Pokemon themselves, like saying I was an Electabuzz guy, Gen 1, you know, like yeah, and when Pokemon Go came out, my ex-girlfriend and I, or my girlfriend at the time, we would go around the town. And she was Mystic, and I was Instinct, and we will go and we'll fight ourselves at battles and stuff like that. It was a good crowd, good times.
I had to give you props. Team Instincts for the win. Let's go.
Can't lose. We trust your instincts. What?
Yes, you do. I know. Like, it was funny, too, because my instinct was like, I'm Team Instinct right away. Like, I knew it right away. There was no decision.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you want to be a good trainer, why not?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I stopped playing Pokemon Go after a while, but I definitely was part of the first phase. And it was, I don't know if you noticed, but Electabuzz has an evolution now.
I did not know this.
Okay, yeah. 4th generation, he got Electivire, which is even more cool than Electabuzz. And Electabuzz is a cool Pokemon already.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. I had to look that up.
Yeah, and so it's pretty cool. I grew up with most of them. Like, I played up until, like, the 6th generation, and now there's 8, so it's like, or 7?
Come back to it, or are you done? You done, bro?
I'm not sure if I'm done. I just didn't really care for the last 2 generations. This didn't really seem too appealing to me. Like, I don't want to play the UK region. Sorry.
You don't want to go to the beach in Hawaii, you know? Okay.
Yeah, no, I played that one, but I got bored of it, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, suntan Pokemon.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, just before we go too much on a tangent there was actually a fan-made game for one of the second generation games where, so it's pretty old, but like the fan-made game allows you to pick from like all six. I know. But I grew up with the third generation, so like
That's how it is.
yeah. But it's funny because like, this game you can choose between 6 different normal starters, and like you can have 15 different starters in general. You can go to any of the 16 gyms in any order you want.
Nice.
And yeah, and so you can choose between all 6 of the regular starters, and then also Pikachu, Eevee, Ditto, Smeargle, all these other ones too, which is weird.
It's like Mega Man almost. You just pick your thing. Yeah.
You can even design your character too from all the options they have there. Change your color to whatever you want. So if you want to do a branded one even too, which is kind of cool.
Hell yeah, dude.
It was really cool, and I thought that was kind of like neat because you can just choose whatever order you want.
It's funny, for 10 years from now, people are going to ask, what's Pokemon Go? You have to be like, well, it's kind of like the anti-pandemic. They were like, go outside that summer. They're supposed to be locked inside. Yikes.
So what is next for you, Flobo? What is the next flow for you?
I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that wants to take it one day at a time and say, hey, look, whatever happens, happens. Because you don't want to become a slave to what you're working on. It's good to be a polymath, but you don't want to be like slaving away and be like, oh no. And I can tell you one thing. What I'm working on now, I've never been more creatively fulfilled. I go to bed the good tired. I would like more visibility. I'm not sure what that means necessarily. I know they speak into existence. I'm not sure what that means a manager. I'm not sure what that means a network show might getting picked up or getting more traction with the fan base. But I will say this, being able to create original content weekly with a fan group that comes in every week and get to be myself, I'm already on the path to whatever happens. And if that scales up, great. If it comes a spinoff, great. If someone collaborates with me for a different show, great. I am open on that level. Just to be able to be the digital side of me, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And I think at this point, too, growth is probably a big thing. My ethos is taking that omnichannel or taking the polymathic approach and trying to be everywhere. Because at this point, there's tools to help you do that. And granted, you don't want to spread yourself too thin, but I think that if you can get more reach out there, perhaps that could help you grow. Maybe you can go on a podcast store, in this case, Polycast, but they can go on different shows.
Yeah, that's what Matchmaker was about. That's how we met.
Yeah. Well, so where can people find you online, Flobo?
Wow, you can find me all over the place. Couple websites for you. NewAmsterdam.com, KNEW, Amsterdam.com. It's kind of like an homage to my hometown, New York, in the pursuit of knowledge. NewAmsterdam.com. All my shows that I host are listed there, and the backstory about the brand and some news out there. If you're into wrestling, like I am, because I mention it all the time, my buddy and I, Jack Farmer, we cover NXT and NXT UK in a show called Draped in Gold. Learn more about that show at drapedingold.com. And then if you want to know me personally, you want to catch up with me on social media, flobito.com. That's FLOBITO.com. You can know about my DJ experiences, my Patreon, my web shop, my merch store, all available at flobito.com. One more time, newamsterdam.com and drapedingold.com.
Well, and I have those actually in the description for you, but it's good to have that audio and video representation there so people can see it.
You gotta understand, my mom always will text me, you said the website's too fast. And so I said it many times for Mom. Mom, I love you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, and so what could be a call to action for the audience today? Besides, I guess, checking out the website.
Yeah, for sure. Well, in life or just for me?
The call to action, I guess, would be to go to the website. But what could be a call to growth for an audience member to do?
Oh, sure. I always say, for me, support the homie. And that just means me as your new friend Flobito, but even your other homies out there who are working on something. But today you can support the homie by visiting flobito.com. And as for everyone else, I mean, I'm from Brooklyn. It's a huge town, but it's small to me. I always say, make your hometown proud.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, once again, this is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and Flobo Boyce on the Polymath Podcast. Thank you.